I didn't know that day would rearrange something in me. It started in a laundromat that always smelled faintly like lemon detergent and overheated wiring. Thursdays at 6 p.m. That was my routine. 2 loads. Dark clothes first. White second. I'd sit in the plastic chair by the window, pretending to read whatever book I'd grabbed on the way out. She walked in 10 minutes after me. I'd known her for years, technically. My best friend's mom. Mrs. Ramon. Mid-40s. Always composed in that quiet way that made you straighten your back without knowing why. I used to see her in their kitchen when we were teenagers, hair tied up, sleeves rolled, asking if we wanted more rice. Now I saw her here. She nodded when she noticed me. Not surprised. Just aware. Laundry day? She asked, holding up a canvas basket like it was proof of something. Yeah. The glamorous life, I said. She smiled, small, controlled, and chose the machine 2 spots from mine. Close enough to talk. Not close enough to assume anything. The machines started their dull rotation. Metal against metal. A steady hum. I tried to focus on my book, but I kept noticing things. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The way she checked the detergent cap twice before pouring. Careful. Precise. You still reading those heavy novels? She asked after a minute, glancing at the cover. Trying to, I said. Mostly just stare at the same page. She laughed softly. Not at me. With me. It felt strange how easy it was. We'd never really talked alone before. There was always my friend in the room. Or noise. Or time pressing in. Now it was just the hum of dryers and the squeak of sneakers on tile. I realized I was folding the corner of my receipt into a tight square. Over and over. I flattened it, then folded it again. Didn't know why. How's work? She asked. Fine. I shrugged. It's fine. I hated how automatic that sounded. Fine meant long shifts and microwave dinners. Fine meant opening my phone at night and typing messages I didn't send. Fine meant scrolling through contacts and stopping at names that didn't feel safe anymore. She nodded like she understood what fine actually meant. My son says you've been busy, she said. He misses having you around. Yeah. I looked down at my shoes. I've just been around. Not with anyone. Just around. There was a pause then. Not uncomfortable. Just full. She sat across from me while the dryers ran, hands folded loosely in her lap. I caught myself glancing at them. Her fingers, bare except for a thin silver ring. She noticed. Not in a dramatic way. Just a flick of her eyes meeting mine before I looked away. You look tired, she said gently. I am. It slipped out before I could dress it up. She studied me for a second longer than necessary. Not judging. Just seeing. That age. She murmured, almost to herself. It's loud. Even when nothing's happening. I didn't know what to say to that. So I didn't. The buzzer went off. Too loud in the small space. We both flinched slightly and laughed at ourselves. We folded in silence for a while. Our elbows almost brushing once. I felt it in my chest more than my arm. When we stepped outside, the sky was already dim. Streetlights humming on. She adjusted the strap of her bag and hesitated. You can come by tomorrow, she said. Casual. Almost an afterthought. I'll be home. There's something I've been meaning to talk about. I blinked. About. She looked at me for a moment. Really looked. Then gave a small shake of her head. Just something true, she said. Something true. She walked toward her car, leaving that hanging between us like steam in cold air. That night, I opened my phone. Started typing a message to someone I used to think I loved. Stopped. Deleted it. At 11:47 p.m., a text came in. From her. Are you free tomorrow afternoon? It might be easier without anyone else around. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. And that was the first moment I realized whatever she wanted to tell me wasn't going to leave me the same. The next afternoon, I stood outside her door longer than I should have. It was the same house I'd been in 100 times growing up. Same pale paint. Same wind chime that never seemed to make a sound unless you were already listening for it. She opened the door before I knocked. I saw you through the window, she said, stepping aside. You always hesitate. I don't. She tilted her head. You do. Inside, the house felt quieter than I remembered. No television in the background. No music from my friend's room. Just the faint ticking of the wall clock and the smell of cardamom. Tea, she asked. Sure. I followed her into the kitchen. She moved with that same careful precision from the laundromat. measuring leaves, pouring water, wiping a drop from the counter with the side of her thumb. I leaned against the doorway, unsure where to put my hands. "You said there was something," I reminded her. She didn't answer right away, just handed me a mug. Our fingers brushed, barely, but it was enough to make me aware of the space between us. We sat at the small dining table, the one where we used to do homework in high school, while she cut fruit and pretended not to listen. "I've been thinking," she began, eyes on her tea, "about how strange it is watching people grow up." I tried to smile. "That sounds ominous." "It's not." A small exhale. "It's just you were a boy in this house. Loud. Always hungry. Now you sit there like you've been carrying something heavy for years." I looked down at my cup. The steam had already thinned. "I didn't ask you here to make you uncomfortable," she added quickly. "You didn't." She studied me, like she was deciding whether to continue. "I got divorced 3 years ago," she said finally. "I don't think you knew." I shook my head. It wasn't dramatic. Just quiet. Papers signed. Rooms divided. People pretending to be polite. She smiled at that, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I thought I'd feel free," she said. Instead, I felt unnecessary. The word landed softly, but it stayed. I didn't know what to offer her. Advice felt ridiculous. Sympathy felt too intimate. So I told the truth. "Sometimes I think I'm already unnecessary," I said. "Like I'm just filling space until something starts." She looked up then. Really looked. "That age," she said again, softer now. "It tricks you into thinking you're behind." "And your age?" I asked before I could stop myself. A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "My age tricks you into thinking you've missed it." We both laughed, but it lingered too long. There it was, the thing we weren't naming. The years between us. The fact that I used to sit in her son's bedroom playing video games while she folded laundry downstairs. The way this conversation would look from the outside. I imagine my friend walking in right now. Imagine trying to explain why my chest felt tight just sitting across from his mother. She reached across the table suddenly, brushing a speck of tea from my sleeve. "You always were messy," she said lightly. Her hand didn't pull away right away. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't inappropriate. But it wasn't nothing. And I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that afternoon, the house felt different. Not warmer. Not colder. Just aware. I told myself it was in my head. That brushing a sleeve meant nothing. That two lonely people could talk without it turning into something fragile and dangerous. But I started finding reasons to stop by. Returning a book I could have kept longer. Dropping off something her son forgot at my place. Small errands that didn't need doing. She never questioned it. Sometimes she'd open the door already smiling, like she'd been expecting me. Other times she looked surprised, almost cautious, before stepping aside. "You're here a lot lately," she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter while I fixed the loose cabinet hinge she'd mentioned in passing. "Am I?" She gave me a look. Not accusing, just measuring. The screwdriver slipped in my hand. I focused on the metal, on tightening something that wasn't me. Her son started texting more. "You've been talking to my mom. She mentioned you came by. Nothing suspicious. Just curiosity." Still, I felt my pulse in my throat when I read it. "Yeah," I typed back. "Just helping with stuff." Helping with stuff. I didn't mention the tea, or the way she'd started asking about my work like it mattered, or how she remembered the smallest details. The name of my supervisor, the project I hated, the band I played on repeat. One night, I came over and found her in the living room instead of the kitchen. Lights dim. No television. Just the standing lamp casting a soft circle around her. "I was about to call you," she said. "That did something to me." "Why didn't you?" I asked. She hesitated. A real one this time. Fingers lacing together, then unlacing. I wasn't sure if I should. The air shifted. I sat across from her, closer than usual. Our knees almost aligned. I could hear the clock again. That steady, unhelpful ticking. "You ever feel like you're standing too close to a line?" she said quietly. "And you're pretending not to see it." I swallowed. "Yeah." She nodded once, like that was enough. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at the screen. Her expression changed, subtle, but there. Guarded. "My sister," she said, turning the phone face down without answering. I noticed that. The choice. "You should," I started. "It can wait." Silence pressed in. Not heavy. just thick enough to notice. She leaned back slightly, creating a few inches of space. The first time I'd seen her pull away instead of lean in. "We have to be careful," she said. Not stern, not scared, just aware. "About what?" I asked, even though I knew. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I forgot how old either of us were. "About confusing things," she replied. I wanted to tell her I wasn't confused. That whatever this was felt clearer than most things in my life. Instead, I said nothing. She stood up, walked toward the window. I followed without thinking. We ended up too close again, shoulders almost touching as we looked out at the dark street. "Your friend would hate this," I said softly. A faint smile. "He doesn't hate easily. But he would." She turned then. Slow. Careful. Our faces were closer than they'd ever been. Close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. Close enough that I could see the faint line near her left eye when she almost smiled. Her hand lifted, like she might touch my face. It stopped halfway. So did I. Neither of us moved. And for a second, just one, it felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see which one of us would step back first. It happened on a Tuesday that felt like any other. I just finished work. Shirt half untucked. Head buzzing from fluorescent lights and polite conversations. I wasn't planning to stop by, but my feet turned toward her street anyway. She was outside when I arrived, sitting on the low concrete wall near the gate. No makeup, hair loose, a grocery bag at her feet. "You look like you lost something," I said. She glanced up, surprised, then not. "Just air," she replied. The house felt small. I sat beside her, not too close, close enough. Cars passed occasionally. The evening carried that soft, in-between chill. Someone nearby was cooking onions. It felt ordinary. That was the dangerous part. "You didn't tell me you were seeing someone," she said suddenly. I blinked. "I'm not. My sister mentioned a girl. Said she saw you at a cafe last week." "Oh." I rubbed the back of my neck. "That was nothing. Just coffee." "Nothing," she repeated, but her voice thinned slightly around the word. It took me a second to understand what I was hearing. "You thought I was." She stood up before I could finish. "This is exactly what I meant," she said, pacing a step away, then back. "We start filling in blanks. Imagining things. It's not fair to you." "Not fair to me." I stood too. "You think I'm confused." She looked at me then. Really looked, and something in her composure cracked. "You're 23, she said, softer now. "You're supposed to be reckless with people your own age. You're not supposed to be here. With me." "Why not?" Her jaw tightened. A flicker of something raw passed over her face. Jealousy, maybe. Or fear. Hard to tell the difference. "Because I know what loneliness does," she said. "It makes ordinary attention feel like oxygen. And I refuse to be the reason you mistake that for something else." The words landed heavier than she intended. "I'm not mistaking anything," I said. My voice didn't rise. It just steadied. "I come here because I want to." She laughed once. Dry. "One is easy." Silence stretched between us. I noticed her hands. How they'd curled into the straps of the grocery bag earlier. How they were empty now, unsure where to rest. "You think this is just about you feeling seen?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because it wasn't just that. It was the way she listened without interrupting. The way she said my name like it wasn't an afterthought. The way the house felt less hollow when I was inside it. "I don't want to lose my son over something selfish," she added. There it was. Guilt, finally given a shape. I would never. I stopped. Because what promise could I make? She stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough to feel the heat between us. "You don't know what this costs," she said. "Then tell me." Her breath caught. Just slightly. For a moment, the street noise faded. It was just us and the thin space between our bodies. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back up. Honest. Frightened. "I think about you," she admitted. Barely louder than the wind. The world tilted. I could have closed the distance. I felt it. That pull, simple and irreversible. Instead, I stayed still. "So what do we do with that?" I asked. She didn't answer, and neither of us moved. After that night by the gate, something shifted. Not dramatically. No slammed doors. No harsh words. Just absence. I stopped going by. The first 2 days felt intentional, disciplined, even. I told myself space was mature. Space was respectful. I buried myself in work, stayed late, Let the office lights decide when I could leave. On the third day, I walked past her street without meaning to. My body slowed near the corner, like it expected something. The house looked the same. Curtains half drawn. Porch light off. I kept walking. My phone stayed quiet. By Friday, curiosity started dressing itself up as indifference. I checked my messages too often. Scrolled up to our last exchange. I think about you. No follow-up. No apology. Just that. Saturday afternoon, I ran into my friend at a grocery store. "You've been ghosting," he said, tossing cereal into his cart. "Mom asked about you." The word mom landed differently now. "Oh," I tried to sound casual. "She okay?" He shrugged. "Yeah, she's been weird lately. Talking about maybe moving." "Moving?" I blinked. "Where?" "Not sure. Closer to my aunt, maybe." Said she needs a change. A change. I nodded like that was normal information. Like it didn't feel like the ground had tilted slightly under my feet. That night, I drove past her house. I didn't plan to stop. I just slowed. The living room light was on. I could see her silhouette through the curtains. Sitting at the table, head bent slightly forward. Alone. My chest tightened with something ugly. Not jealousy this time. Something closer to fear. What if she was already detaching? Rewriting the story in her head, so I was just a phase. A distraction. A mistake corrected in time. My hand hovered over the steering wheel. I could park. Walk up. Knock. Instead, I drove on. The next day, she finally texted. "You've been quiet." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Thought maybe you needed space. The typing dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Maybe I did," she wrote. Then another message. "I have an offer to sell the house." Sell. Everything in me reacted before my mind did. "Are you going to?" A long pause. I don't know if staying is fair to anyone. Anyone. I wanted to ask who that included. Her son. Me. Herself. Instead, I typed, "You don't have to make decisions because of me." I erased it. Typed again. "I can handle whatever this is." Erased that too. What was this, anyway? Another message came through. "You deserve uncomplicated things." That word again. Deserve. Like I was being handed back my youth in careful wrapping. I stared at her contact name until the screen dimmed. Outside my apartment window, the street was loud. Motorbikes. Someone arguing 2 floors down. Life continuing without asking for permission. I picked up my keys. Put them back down. Opened our chat. Closed it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. Her house was only a 10-minute drive away. I didn't go. And that night, one chair at her dining table stayed empty, even though I kept imagining myself sitting there. I went on Sunday. No plan. No speech rehearsed in the car. Just a knock I couldn't postpone any longer. She opened the door like she'd been standing on the other side of it. For a second, neither of us spoke. "Hi," she said. "Hi." The word carried too much history for 2 letters. She stepped aside. I walked in. The house looked slightly different. A cardboard box near the hallway. A stack of old photo frames on the console table. Not packed. Just considered. "You're really thinking about selling?" I said. She nodded once. "It might be easier." For who? She didn't answer that. Instead, she walked into the kitchen. I followed. The kettle was already on. Of course it was. "You don't have to do this," I said, leaning against the counter. "You don't have to rearrange your life because things got complicated." She turned to face me. "You think that's why, isn't it?" Her eyes softened, but not in relief. In something closer to sadness. "I've been lonely in this house for years," she said. "Long before you started knocking on the door." That landed differently. "You didn't create the problem," she continued. "You just made it visible." The kettle clicked off. Neither of us moved to pour the water. "I pulled away because I was scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Of how quickly I started needing you here." "Needing." I swallowed. "I don't want to be something you look back on and regret," she said. "I don't regret you," I replied. "Not yet." There was no accusation in it. Just experience. She stepped closer. Not impulsively. Deliberately. "You're at the beginning of things," she said. "Careers. People. Mistakes you're allowed to make. And you're at the end." I asked quietly. A faint smile. "No. Just aware of the cost." Silence filled the kitchen. The refrigerator humming. A car passing outside. "I kept waiting for you to show up," she said. "I almost didn't." I know. That startled me. I know you, she added. You retreat when something matters. That was unfairly accurate. My chest felt tight, but clear, like standing in cold air. I don't know what this becomes, I said. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's temporary. But I'd rather choose it than spend the next 5 years wondering what would have happened if I hadn't knocked. Her breath caught slightly at that. You're asking me to risk my stability, she said. I'm asking you not to run from something just because it's inconvenient. We stood there, close, not touching. She searched my face like she was checking for doubt, for immaturity, for illusion. All she found was fear and the decision underneath it. I can't promise you forever, she said. I'm not asking for forever. Another pause. Then, softer, I think about you too. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was enough. Her hand lifted, this time not stopping halfway, and rested lightly against my chest, over my heartbeat, testing its steadiness. I placed my hand over hers, not pulling her closer, just holding it there. The cost was visible in her eyes. In mine too. Okay, I asked. She studied me for one long second. Then she nodded. Okay. We didn't rush into anything after that. Monday still came. Work still felt too bright. The world didn't rearrange itself because two people said, okay, in a kitchen. But something steadied. I started coming by in the mornings sometimes. 8:47 a.m., almost accidentally the first time. She'd be in the kitchen with tea already steeping, sunlight cutting across the table in thin, patient lines. You're early, she said once. You're predictable, I replied. She smirked at that, sliding a cup toward me before I could ask. We never labeled what we were doing. We just kept doing it. Sometimes I stayed for 10 minutes. Sometimes an hour. Sometimes I'd leave for work with the faint smell of cardamom clinging to my jacket, and she'd text at noon, eat something that isn't from a vending machine. I still folded napkins when I was nervous. She still noticed. Her son figured it out before we told him. Not because we were careless, because we were calmer, less guarded around each other. The tension had shifted from forbidden to intentional. It wasn't easy. There were conversations. Long ones. Honest ones. He was quiet at first. Protective in a way that made sense. You're serious? He asked me once. Yes. He studied my face the way she used to. Measuring. Don't disappear on her, he said finally. I won't. And I didn't. She didn't sell the house. The boxes in the hallway disappeared one by one. The photo frames went back up, slightly rearranged. A subtle reclaiming. We still sat on that low concrete wall some evenings. The same one where she'd admitted she thought about me. Cars passing. Air cooler now that months had shifted. Funny, she said once, watching the streetlights blink on. I thought choosing this would feel reckless. And it feels steady. It wasn't dramatic love. No loud declarations in the rain. No sweeping speeches. It was black coffee waiting for me when I stayed over too late and had to rush out early. It was her hand finding mine under the table during dinner with friends. Not to prove anything, just to check I was there. It was learning her silences. The difference between tired and distant. The way she touched my wrist when she wanted me to slow down. Longing had softened into something quieter. Not urgency. Not hunger. Presence. I still have moments of doubt. So does she. Age doesn't disappear. Neither does history. But they stopped feeling like walls and started feeling like context. One morning, months understanding themselves into something real, I watched her pour tea while I leaned against the counter. The same counter where we almost walked away from each other. You know, she said, not looking at me. I'm glad you knocked. I smiled. You opened the door. She glanced up at that. A small, private smile. The kind that belongs to two people and no one else. The clock ticked. The house felt lived in. Not lonely. I didn't know that day in the laundromat would rearrange something in me. But now I do. It didn't explode my life. It grounded it. And sometimes, when we sit side by side in the quiet, not speaking, not needing to, I think about how close we came to letting fear decide for us. She squeezes my hand once, like she knows exactly where my mind just went. And that's enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?